Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Geeks Love Lists. My name is Robin Chetty. I am hosting today's session. I have custody of the kids for the weekend. We're eating sweets and chocolates exclusively. Joining me today, my fellow hosts, Brendyn Lotz and Louis Monzon.
Howdy. Hey, what's up?
How are you guys doing? How are you guys keeping cool this...
I'm not. Plain and simple.
Much the same.
Yeah, with a fan, I guess, but it's not working.
Just blowing hot air onto you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the load shedding is certainly not helping.
No, absolutely not.
But we're going to try and, I guess, forget those ills for the moment and kind of focus on our topic of discussion for today, which is kind of sticking with our theme for the month of November around gaming, and it is the best movie-based video games. It was, I guess, a trend, late 90s, early 2000s, where it seemed like every single movie had some kind of tie-in to a video game. I think the superhero genre in particular kind of really kicked it off.
Spider-Man. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
I remember that game in particular. I think things have changed though. The nature of, I guess, the pervasiveness of superhero films and things like that mean that you don't necessarily have to hit all the media points. You can just
release a movie.
Well, I say that, but these days when you release a superhero movie, there's always going to be conjecture around it.
Yeah.
Whether it be for casting or, I guess, creative choices or whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess the water is muddier than ever, I guess.
Just to be clear, we're not talking about movies that are made from video games. We're talking about video games that are directly inspired by movies. So, like, I know there's a lot of games that are based on things that eventually became movies, but we're talking today about video games that are specifically from movies.
So fans of last year's Uncharted film, unfortunately, we will not be mentioning that game again in this podcast.
I didn't think Tom Holland could make such a bad movie, but I mean...
I hate to say it, Tom Holland has some duds. He has some real duds. There was that one, like, something walking. It had...
The Devil All the Time.
No.
I know there's that one on Netflix, which is horrendous.
Is it the one where he can smell the people's auras?
Yeah, there we go. I think it's
quite poor.
It's got Daisy Ridley as well from the Star Wars stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, not the greatest.
Yeah, so I guess we're kind of focusing on video games that were direct tie-ins to movies and kind of didn't have other media associated to it previously. I guess just to kind of set out the ground rules a bit more. For example, the X-Men franchise, obviously those movies are based on the comic books, and there were some tie-ins, but not every single video game was directly tied into some of those Bryan Singer. And I forgot who directed The Last Stand. It was a terrible one.
I'm actually not sure. So Louis is furiously Googling.
I'm thinking about X-Men video.
Doing it live.
Doing it live.
Yeah, so we are mentioning a X-Men related game, but those are kind of the rules that we kind of set out. And I think first and foremost, we've got to thank our, I guess, readers, viewers, listeners on social media. We put out a message on our X, formerly Twitter, and our Facebook pages, just to kind of gauge their opinion on some options as far as notable video games are concerned. Some were good. I guess all were good, but some of them actually didn't meet the criteria we had for this subject matter. So we got a suggestion around Alien vs. Predator and AVP2.
Yeah.
For our criteria here, it didn't really meet the standard because it wasn't around the actual Alien vs. Predator movie.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth talking about Alien games, though, right?
Yeah.
So maybe not AVP2 because it might not be based. It was released, or the one that was kind of recommended was that specific one was released before the first Alien vs. Predator movie.
Yeah.
But there has been a lot of Alien games. Like there was one that was released on PlayStation 1, a first-person shooter.
Oh, yes. Alien Resurrection, wasn't it?
Yes, it was the Alien Resurrection.
Yeah.
That one was based on the movie.
Wasn't it a follow-on from the movie, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you get to play as Ridley, not Ridley.
Ripley.
Sorry.
Ridley directed the first Alien.
Sorry, you play. It's confusing now. You play as Ripley, and then you can also play as the Winona Ryder character.
Oh yes.
And that one is famously horribly difficult, if I remember correctly. And there's like this really cool game mechanic where you can get infected with a chest burster.
Yes.
And then you have like a game. You have like a time limit to find like a medical bay to extract the alien embryo before it kills you.
Oh,
You have,
I do remember this now.
That was an interesting.
I wonder if Prometheus took inspiration from that.
Yeah, because that was a big thing in Prometheus where she gives herself an abortion vibes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that we can mention that one. But yeah,
And then there's also Alien Isolation, but that's not based on the movies, is it?
I mean, it has to be.
Is that the one you play as a
Slightly.
xenomorph?
Yeah, because
No. It's where you're hiding from the xenomorph the entire time.
because I never played Alien Isolation, but as far as I know, you play as Ripley's daughter that gets a mention in Aliens, the
Yeah.
second Alien movie. So it's like loosely based on the movies.
Okay. But I mean, yeah, there's been a few Alien games and Alien versus Predator, but that, as we mentioned, the one doesn't count.
Yeah, the world of H.R. Geiger is rich for mining, I guess,
Yeah.
as far as gaming is concerned. A few other suggestions that are thrown our way. One from our very own Clinton Matos,
Yeah.
who cannot join us. He's fine. He's perfectly fine. He doesn't join us for the podcast today. He mentioned, and we are talking about X-Men now, X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is a game tie-in for the terrible Wolverine movie that Gavin Hood directed. It was actually
South Africa's Gavin.
one of the rare times, yes, that I was not proud to be South African when
But
that movie came out.
that game actually, I believe, set the stage for the Batman Arkham series. Because
How so is it?
so if you look at the combat from that game,
Sure.
and then you look at the combat from Batman Arkham Asylum, was the first one?
Yeah.
Those two games, the combat is very similar, like eerily similar. So I can see there was something good that came from that game. I don't think that X-Men Origins Wolverine was particularly good, but the combat eventually I think made its way through to Batman Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, I remember that game had particularly awesome cutscenes where Wolverine's doing crazy stuff
Yeah.
involving helicopters
You've
and
never seen the movie, yeah?
yeah. Yeah, I prefer not to talk about the movie. I don't even talk about it. And then let me check here. Robin Lee Chetty also made a suggestion here, and it is around the 2002 Spider-Man, and I think that really, as you mentioned earlier, kind of kicked off things as far as movie tie-ins are concerned. I specifically remember that game because once you completed it, one of the rewards, if you met certain criteria, was you got a Mary Jane Watson skin.
Oh yeah.
And you got to wall crawl as Mary Jane Watson, swing around as Mary Jane Watson.
Yeah, back in the day, games were kind of crazy like that.
Yes. So
We're not going to make a whole section where you have to be stealth Mary Jane.
No.
We're just a skin.
Yeah.
And she's now Spider-Man.
If I remember correctly, doesn't Tobey Maguire voice Spider-Man in that game?
I think he does.
he made you. I think it's a voice that's, I don't want to say easy to replicate, but I'm
Eerily
sure.
similar to the to the Spider-Man Tobey.
Yeah, but yeah, I think at that time Tobey Maguire was still up and coming actor, needed that bread.
bag,
yeah. Then one of the suggestions we got on Facebook was for Chronicles of Riddick. I believe there are 2 Chronicles of Riddick games, both kind of stealth, kind of in nature, first-person stealth games. I never played either of them, but I have heard the names being bandied around before. Have either of you guys played it?
If I remember correctly, the names of the game, one of them is Escape from Black Athena. I might be getting that wrong.
So I think one of them is the Battle of Dark Athena or Black Athena, and the other one was Escape from Butcher's Bay. Yeah.
Right. So the Escape from Butcher Bay was, if you guys remember Top CD, the store.
Yes.
The one in Crest used to have set up a PlayStation or an Xbox 360, I think. And Escape from Butcher Bay was one of the demo games that were
Oh
on there.
wow.
And I played a little bit of it, and I remember the graphics were excellent for the time. Vin Diesel it's a first-person game, except for certain sections where you see Riddick walking around and you get to like cut people up with his signature daggers and stuff. Those games are very obscure for being tied into like major blockbuster movies, which is unusual because usually when a blockbuster movie comes out, the game is kind of bigger. But those games I think were played by very few people.
I don't remember playing them. I didn't even know that they were games until you guys mentioned them just before the podcast. But I mean, that's just me. Yeah.
Well, I guess Pitch Black was, I don't want to say a cult classic or like an indie movie per se, but it was one of those ones that kind of flew under the radar.
Yeah.
I only ever remember watching it when I saw that video spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Chronicles of Riddick movie itself was a bit more popular.
Yeah.
That's the sequel to Pitch Black. And then they remade Pitch Black again as the third sequel, which everyone was kind of like, why did you do this? But those are the movies.
Because family, that's why.
Family.
Yeah, so I think, kind of talking about it now, there's clearly a lot of great nostalgic moments and a lot of great memories around these kind of movie-inspired games. So why do you guys reckon they've actually stopped making it? Because it doesn't seem as prevalent as it was previously. It seems like if there are movie tie-ins, it's going to be via DLC or some kind of skin.
Fortnite.
I think maybe that's the ticket, right? It's a lot easier and faster to just make a movie tie-in, for Modern Warfare 3 or for, then have a whole studio, take a year or two to make a full game that is going to get terrible reviews. Because the movie studios are involved in the process and they don't want certain things, or maybe the studio involved isn't just passionate in the project. Like there's a reason why a lot of these movie-based games either didn't sell well or reviewed poorly, and who knows, the reason. But it's kind of evident that every now and then one of these games is really good, and it's rare for a movie-based game to be really good.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to what Lou was saying, but also just the cost of making a video game these days is immense.
Sure.
Like, it's not sure, we can talk about indie titles, but I don't foresee somebody like Universal Pictures
making Wes Anderson.
Yeah, going to an indie, an indie developer to make a video game. Like, that's a big risk for them. And I know that indie developers make some really good games. Absolutely, I'm not denying that. But I mean, does the head of Universal Studios know that? Probably not. So I think the cost factors into it a lot. I also think that nowadays in 2023 we have far fewer game developers or publishers, as it were, and for them to put their name behind a video or a movie tie-in game it's a really big risk. I think
the only crazy guy left is James Cameron. He's I think as far as I know, the only major movie game that's coming out anytime soon is Avatar Frontiers of Pandora.
Yeah,
that's coming out in December.
Which is just Far Cry with Na'vi.
If I don't get to attach my ponytail to a plant and make out with the plant, I will be very, very angry.
Terrible game. Poor reviews. Apart from that, who knows what movie or series will get a game? It's
I think frequency is also an important factor.
Yeah.
Just the sheer amount of pop culture focused or related movies and series that are coming out, it's going to be obviously very difficult for some game studio to keep pace.
I mean, also I think if we look at the mobile game market, you'll see a lot more games that are based on movies in there. I mean, I just look at like Netflix that released like Stranger Things games, right, for mobile, which is sort of a tie-in to another piece of digital art, but how successful are those games? Number one, I don't think that they are all that successful. Obviously, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I mean, I don't hear people talking about, oh, you got to play the Stranger Things mobile game, So I think that it's where we do see video games that are based on movies. They're they're catering to a far smaller audience, or it's a video game tie-in to like a kids show or a kids movie, where there's like that level of association where a kid will see this and be like, oh, I want to play this game, and then they play it and it's really just a reskin of Spyro or Banjo-Kazooie in 2023, and it's not something that reaches mainstream success. At least that's from my perspective.
Well, I think to your kind of Netflix point, I think one issue that Netflix struggles with, especially with its really popular series, is to kind of keep it in the zeitgeist, as it were, for a long time. I mean, what was last year, everyone was talking about Stranger Things. This year, not at all.
Yeah.
If there was a Stranger Things game that keeps it in people's minds for a bit longer, I guess helps them sell more things.
But then there's also the question of what type of game do you make for a movie? Do you make just a single player experience, which we know studios don't like doing, or publishers rather don't like doing? Or do you do a live service game, which is just not good? I mean, I think a good example of this is, while it's not based on the movies, the Avengers game was something that a lot of people were asking for, a game that was based on the Avengers. And then when it came out, it just flopped because, A, it wasn't based on the movies, which everybody recognized. They didn't use the original cast from the movies, which was a major misstep for many people. And then also the microtransactions, the live service nature of the game. I mean, the issues go on and on. Performance, the story wasn't very engaging. I mean, yeah, there's so many problems with it, and I think for somebody to take a risk like that and release a game that's not like something, or not an independent standalone thing, right, where it's not tied to a game, it's a massive risk.
So what's weird is that in that same token, the Guardians of the Galaxy game is exactly the opposite, Had a great narrative.
Yeah.
And people loved the gameplay. And, it did well on Steam, and then you ask, what's the difference? Because it's basically the same thing, right? It's a game based on a comic book property that's very popular because of the movies. Why did the Avengers game turn out so terrible and the Guardians game turn out so well?
So I'll say that because Guardians game is not a live service game. It's a single player, you play through the campaign, it's done.
Yeah.
And you can go back and play it again if you want, but it's not like, you got to log in every day, do your dailies, do your weeklies, do all this nonsense, turn the game into a chore. And yeah, I think that's maybe why Guardians was such a better game. But also, Guardians isn't based on the movies, is it?
But the Avengers game also isn't based on the movies.
Yeah. I'm just using the Avengers as like something that could have been based on the video games. But
I mean, you can earn skins in that game that are referenced from the movies as well.
So I mean, there's things, but I don't know. I just feel like if you link it to a movie and you stray from that movie, you're gonna get people upset. Or if you stick too closely to the movie, you're going to get people upset because a movie is really just a 2-hour, maximum 3-hour experience. So, yeah, I don't know.
Do we think that the era of the movie game tie-in is done and dusted?
It depends on the source material, I guess. And we'll get to it later when we talk about like the Jurassic Park games. It has to be something that can be... If it's easily applied to a game, it can keep going. But if you have to stretch to make a game out of it, that's not happening anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, like I don't see I don't know, like you mentioned jokingly, a Wes Anderson movie turned into a video game. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening for like most Hollywood blockbusters. Like there's a new movie coming out called Argyle about a cat. Like spy story type thing, but that wouldn't translate into a video game at all. But then you have like, and we mentioned this later, Harry Potter, which does translate into a video game. We can argue about how well it does. But I mean, we've now had a couple of games based on that. So I agree with Louis. I think it depends largely on the source material and whether it can just be applied to a game. Like Guardians of the Galaxy is a comic book initially, or first and foremost, and you can just apply that to a video game in a really great way, it turns out. But the Avengers, you really can't, at least from the experience with Squeenix.
I think ultimately also it'll kind of boil down to the fact about how much care the developer actually takes with it, because it seems like the really poor, examples of game tie-ins, they almost seemed like they were tacked on, not necessarily something that was built from the ground up.
Yeah.
And I think we'll kind of run through our list of options that are really great as far as the gameplay or the visuals or whatever aspect it was. You could see that there was care taken with it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's also a nostalgia factor, some big nostalgia factor with a lot of them as well. But I think that probably segues nicely into the list that we actually have.
Okay, let's stop there because the power's about to go out.
Cool.
So I want to stop this as part 1. Test 1, 2.
Yeah, so I guess we have one short of a dozen. I guess more than a dozen if you include, I guess, all the Jurassic Park picks that we've included here.
Yeah.
But we'll run through the list now. It's not in, I guess, first to last order, but rather just chronologically. And we will start with one that I think Louis can kind of give some insight here to. Dune 2, which is an RTS game based on the divisive, I would say, David Lynch film.
Terrible, I would say.
So the David Lynch Dune film was my first ever like encounter with the Dune universe, and it is, and you think, man, this is some crazy stuff. Frank Herbert is a weirdo, and they made a game out of it. Dune 2. So there was a Dune game, but the Dune 2 game is it uses like images from the movie and stuff, and in that sense, it's based on the movie, right? And it kind of follows the story of the movie, while the first game is different. But the most important thing about Dune 2 for the PC is, and I think they made a port for the for a Nintendo console. I'm not too sure, but it kind of revolutionized RTS. It was the first like real-time strategy game. Before that, it was kind of turn-based. RTSs were turn-based. But after Dune 2, we started seeing things like Warcraft and StarCraft and you know, on and on and on. And all of these, every RTS that came after kind of owes its bones to the second Dune 2, which is based on the divisive, you know, Lynch movie, which is a weird coincidence, you know, if you really think about it. Like the history of RTS are kind of hinged on, you know, this very odd movie, very sweaty people in that film, and very blue eyes, and you know, it was a strange movie.
Lots of internal monologues.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you're looking forward to? I know that it's not a direct tie-in to the Chalamet Dunes. I'll call them the Chalamet Dunes for now. But there's a new Dune project or game that's in the works. Are you excited for that?
I think it's called Spice Wars, Dune Spice Wars.
It's already out.
No, so Spice Wars is the RTS one, but I believe there's an RPG coming as well.
Oh, crazy. It depends on how... I like RPGs. So I didn't know about that. Actually, so it depends on kind of how deep the systems are in the RPG. And you can make your own Fremen and stuff like that.
It has a really hype trailer, and I know it's not directly tied into the Chalamet stuff, but their version of Paul looks pretty much like Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen any gameplay yet. But yeah, I am kind of looking forward to that.
I wonder what kind of... it has to be like an action game, right? Because there's no guns in Dune, not really.
Yeah.
People just slash each other and stuff. So I guess...
Ride sandworms
cool.
instead of fast traveling.
Yeah, that could be sick.
Cool. The next one, next two rather, are really nostalgic for me. That is the 1990 Batman game, which is based on the Tim Burton film.
Yeah.
And then The Lion King, which is obviously based on the 1994 Disney animation, the superior version of The Lion King.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says.
I mean, the game was just hard as nails, though.
Yeah, I remember I watched recently Asmongold. He was watching someone else play the game, and he was also recollecting like just how difficult the game was. If you beat The Lion King when you were that kind of age, I think I was maybe 10, 11.
Yeah.
At that time, you were God amongst men.
Yeah, because there were no saves.
Yeah.
You had to do it in one run.
And the soundtrack was awesome for the time. And then Batman, obviously, Batman was the biggest film probably at the time. I wouldn't say it was the progenitor of all the superhero films we have now, but it was very much the first big budget superhero film that did exceptionally well. Kind of kicked off a whole kind of universe of films for DC or Warner Brothers at the time. So yeah, I guess those two are really nostalgic picks for me. I remember kind of playing it on Sega Saturn, cartridge games. What a time to be alive! Yes.
Blow the cartridge.
What a time to be alive.
The next one we've picked out here is GoldenEye 007. That was on the Nintendo 64. I've never played it, but I always hear this game be mentioned as being a nigh perfect game.
So GoldenEye 007 at 97. I mean, if you're into gaming, you've heard about it. It was, as far as I understand, one of the biggest things about it was it kind of introduced death matches. like the multiplayer. The single player was really good for its the way they kind of did its first person shooter. I don't know if it came before or after Half-Life, which kind of revolutionized the whole thing.
There was an odd job villain you could fight against in the game as well, right?
I don't remember. I never played it, right? So I only know of it like through osmosis. But as far as I've heard people talking about it, the multiplayer was a big deal. That you could kind of choose your character and stuff, and you can kind of and it had these open arenas where you can shoot people and hide in shadows and do a bunch of stuff. So it definitely kind of influenced the industry after it, like kind of the same situation as Dune 2, which was based on a movie. So it's kind of cool how, and I never really noticed that how film has influenced gaming in that way.
Well, I think you look at kind of, and we'll probably discuss it during one of our forthcoming podcast episodes for mass debate around PlayStation versus Xbox. You can look forward to that one. That games, especially AAA ones, are really leaning into the storytelling. A criticism of a lot of AAA games at the moment is that there maybe are too many cutscenes. But I think the storytelling, especially in something like God of War Ragnarok, is on par with a big budget Hollywood film. So, sticking with big budget Hollywood films, Disney's Hercules, 1997, on the original PlayStation.
Yeah, I loved this game when I was growing up. It was so much fun. So you obviously played as Hercules, and you had to do your tasks to get back up to Olympus. But it was so great. You had the
Hydra.
Yeah, the Hydra was one of the bosses. That was a tough boss fight. I can still remember it to this day, and the glee I felt when I eventually beat it. But like, it was just a really good game, really well-made game, and yeah, I mean, it's based on the Disney animated movie. But I believe that the original voice cast also was in that game, including Danny DeVito.
Yeah, he's all over that game, right? Because he plays kind of I don't know, and not exact. He's in
Fawn? Is he a Fawn?
But in terms of like game design, he's kind of like the narrator of the game, where he tells you, you need to go do this, you need to go do that. So he's everywhere. He's all over the game. For me, I was very young when this game came out, but I remember playing it on the PS1. And I remember very clearly the tutorial section is Danny DeVito makes like or rather his character in the movie, he makes like this huge obstacle course for Hercules, like and with like mannequins that he has to slash at, and and that's like burns into my mind, and it's like a platformer with action combat. It's interesting, very cool game, yeah.
All right, I guess now we're starting to enter, a more modern age
the 3D
of gaming. And we picked here Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in 2001 on the PlayStation 1.
So this was kind of like you play as Harry, and you run around Hogwarts collecting like cool items and the wizards, the chocolate wizard frog things, and it was based on the movie in the sense that like all the characters look like the movie counterparts.
I mean, we were saying that loosely because this was on the PlayStation 1.
They look like horrible homunculi, but they look like them. They tried their best. And the troll looks the same and stuff, and you got like Quidditch sections. This was also like a really good. You could feel the passion behind it, like the Hercules game.
Like there were so many little mini games throughout the Philosopher's Stone that actually made it fun. Like you were running around Hogwarts and stuff, but what was really fun was the like collecting the chocolate frogs or flying through Hogwarts on your broomstick, And
if I remember correctly, there was a certain like the spell casting you had to like match with your mouse. You had to like draw the symbols for the spells.
So on PlayStation, I remember you had to match it with like movements of the analog sticks. And also like your button presses. Was it analog sticks? I can't remember if the PlayStation 1 had the analog sticks at the time, because you had the digital controller that didn't have the analog sticks.
This was an interesting one. I also remember the voice. It wasn't the original voice cast.
No.
But I remember Harry going Flipendo, Flipendo, like a million times. Also a very good. And then you kind of see like what the difference maker in if it's a bad movie tie-in game are the people who are making it. Do they want to make a good game, or is it a cash grab? right?
Yeah.
And this game, I think, more than all the other games that came after, because all the other movies got a tie-in game, but this game was really good because they wanted to make something special, and I guess after that it kind of fell off. It wasn't the same.
So they're making Hogwarts Legacy 2, is that right?
I'm sure. I imagine that the Hogwarts Legacy sold. Like,
And we're getting a Harry Potter series from was it HBO Max, I believe.
Yeah.
So
Why?
Like a retelling of the books.
Why? Yeah, I mean, we have the books. We have how many? 7 movies for 6 books. No, stop. Get some help.
no, J.K. Rowling needs more money, I'm guessing.
She doesn't. She
So does Warner
absolutely
Brothers.
does not.
She needs more money, man. All right, so the next one we've picked out here is The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. That's 2003 on the PS2. That's our first PS2 pick. And this was, I guess, the last of a trilogy of games that were Warner Brothers released in terms of tying in with the Lord of the Rings films by Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson features a couple of times on this. And it's very simple. It's a very simple game. You follow the storyline, and you can essentially play part of the missions as Samwise and Frodo, or
Okay.
as Aragorn, Legolas, or Gimli,
Okay.
or
So the whole
as-
fellowship.
Yeah, pretty much the whole fellowship.
Boromir.
No.
Shame. Poor Boromir, man.
No, we lost.
a ghost.
We lost him fellowship already. We lost him in the fellowship of the ring. So it's very simple hack and slash, but the execution I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
The mechanics are really simple, and I remember the final mission quite vividly. Actually, 2 missions in particular. One is where you're playing as Gandalf the White, and you have to protect Gondor, and you're having to deal with all the kind of siege towers and orcs and all of that at the same time, and it was a really intense kind of level of the game, and it felt really rewarding once you kind of beat all the orcs and the ogres that were busy storming Gondor. That was really cool. The other one was right at the end of the game where you play as Aragorn and you are fighting off the swarms of Mordor as you're waiting for Frodo to drop the ring, or rather for Smeagol to be chucked into
With the ring.
into Mount Doom. And that swarm mode was extremely difficult and, again, really rewarding. I thought, again, the execution of the game was great, and I think it's one of the it's the last time I think I can remember enjoying a game that's tied into a movie, and it really enriched my love of those Peter Jackson films.
Yeah, I mean, it also says something that the next very good Lord of the Rings game we got was Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War. And then, I mean, there were lots of Lord of the Rings games. There was a Lord of the Rings MMO, which didn't do very well, in my opinion. So yeah, Return of the King.
Yeah. So these EA published Lord of the Rings games were very nostalgic to me.
Yeah.
So my sister was a big gamer, and when the first time we got the PlayStation 2, not this game, but the Two Towers one, the prequel to this one, was the first game we bought on PlayStation 2. And like I remember so vividly that you get to play as you get to play as Gimli, Aragorn, and Legolas, and you do combos, you hack. It's very now that I think about it, it's very similar to Devil May Cry in a way. And you also get to like shoot your arrows. So Aragorn and Legolas have a bow and arrow, but Gimli you get to throw your axe at people, which is really cool.
That's cool.
And then like you get like if you do enough combos, you get like the super mode where you kill orcs like with one shot.
Yeah, you like go on fire. essentially.
And like at the end of the game, the final mission is obviously in Helm's Deep, and you have to like protect the fortress and stuff. And they just throw so many urukai at you, and you're just kind of like slashing in a giant mob, and it's just insanity. And yeah, I don't think there's anything close to that been done before or after. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, when I was still young, and the coolest part of those games were they actually used footage from the film, and the footage from the film used to sync up with the start of the game. So it transitioned from the actual visuals that Peter Jackson filmed into the actual gameplay. And I thought, at the time, I was like, how did they do that? That's crazy. The next pick is something I'm not familiar with at all, but Shrek 2 from 2004.
So this is in a time where very popular movies used to get 1 million tie-in games. Like every platform would get a Shrek 2.
Yeah, I remember a lot of web games were coming out at this time.
So Shrek 2, the game, is based on the best Shrek movie, which is Shrek 2.
Okay, if you want to be wrong, that's fine.
I mean, there's only 2 really good Shrek movies, the first and the second one. I think the second one's better, and we can have a debate about that at some other time.
No debate necessary, really, to be fair.
And so yeah, this game weirdly also really good. You wouldn't expect that from a Shrek tie-in, but you run around, you play as Shrek, and you get Donkey as your sidekick, and you get the voice cast, so you get Eddie Murphy giving quips in the background and stuff. And also, yeah, very nostalgic. I played this game when I was a kid on PC. Very good port, weirdly enough. The cover of this game is like seared into my mind as well. It's like an orange background, and it's like half of Shrek's smiling face. Nightmare-inducing, but yeah, crazy. It has like RPG systems, so you can buy potions and stuff, and you can like improve your ability scores. It's very strange. Very good. Has like platforming, fighting. It's kind of like Jak and Daxter in a way, if anyone played that. Yeah, strange, but good.
Cool. Our next pick is one from Rockstar. Yeah. And it's not a GTA, but it is pretty much a GTA game.
So I actually played this game following off on the heels of Manhunt. I don't know if you guys ever played that Rockstar game. Uber violent game where you played an ex-con and you basically just murdered people in increasingly violent and creative ways.
So normal GTA game?
I mean, yeah, but a lot more visceral. And off of the back of that game, my desire for ultra-violence was satiated by a movie adaptation or a video game adaptation of the movie The Warriors. What's really weird about this, though, is that this movie was released in 1979 and the game came out in 2005. For PlayStation 2, so it's a really big gap, but it turned out to be a really good game. It was very short, I remember, but the combat was really, really good, and it basically followed the plot of the movie where there are gangs in Coney Island fighting against each other. It tells the story of the movie, because I later went back and watched the movie after I was of age and was able to watch movies like that, and I remember the game kind of portraying the movie really, really well, which I think is a rarity back in those days where you needed to maybe plug the game with a bit more stuff, bit more mini games. But like with Rockstar, they kind of gave you the ability to train your character up and upgrade them through like doing sit-ups or going out and doing missions, which I think helped.
Like some of the San Andreas mechanics.
Exactly, right? And I remember when San Andreas came out, I was like, oh, wow, this is so cool. It reminds me of The Warriors. Unfortunately, though, it was one of those games that I just clean forgot about as the years wore on. And I see now that you can play it on modern consoles. So that's really cool. But I thought it was a great, great game. And only later in life did I realize it was made from a movie. But yeah, really, really good. If you can play The Warriors now, I highly recommend you do. It's a great, great piece of work from Rockstar.
So this one is weird because usually games made from movies are like usually follow the movie, right?
Yeah.
But this one is like a while. This one was made a while after The Warriors came out.
Yeah. A long while. And I mean, the beginning of the game does kind of deviate from the movie a little bit, and then you catch up to where the movie kicks off. So there is a bit of liberty that's taken, but once you get into that space with the movie, it's really, really good. And I think that the aesthetic of the game reminded me a lot of Manhunt, which I loved, and to this day is one of my favorite games of all time. So yeah, I think it was just a really, really well-made game from Rockstar, who was starting to come into its own at that point with like GTA 3, GTA San Andreas, Vice City. Really, really good. Really love The Warriors.
And hopefully GTA 6 whenever that comes out and whenever the next Olympics is or something. Yeah. Cool. And changing gears quite a bit we mentioned Peter Jackson already. So this is Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. That is the full title. That is the official full title of this game. I never played it, apparently the storyline was doo-doo, but you're saying that the actual gameplay was quite good.
This is like fondly remembered as like one of the best kind of video game tie-in for movies, because it kind of had very little to do with the movie, even though you could tell that it was based on the movie and it had kind of set pieces, but it was basically just like there was two like gameplay. So I played this game. It was one of those Mr. Video rentals, and I played it for like a day, and I was like, that's pretty cool.
Now you've unlocked a core memory now.
And there's two different sections of the game. You play as the main character from the movies, the Adrian Brody character.
Yeah.
And then you also get to play as King Kong. And the human sections is a first-person shooter. And you get to play with like a Tommy gun, and you kind of throw spears around and stuff. And there was a lot of like mechanics around fire. So you use fire to like burn through thorn bushes to unlock new areas and stuff. And you kind of had really great physics, I remember. And you throw the spear and you hit the giant insect, and it would just kind of hang limp on the wall, which was like crazy for the time.
Yeah.
This is some innovative stuff that this game is doing. And then in the King Kong sections are a lot more like fighting game style, where you kind of just play from on top. The camera goes up and you see all of King Kong, and you kind of beat up giant dinosaurs and stuff. And so those sections were I guess less atmospheric. And I've seen recently a bunch of people kind of going back and playing this game on YouTube and stuff, and doing like commentaries. Yeah, so
I do wonder if that has to do with the fact that there was a game released last month, Skull Island, The Rise of Kong.
Gosh.
Which, checking here, 10%
on Metacritic.
Google reviews.
Oh gosh.
It's not good. So I wouldn't be surprised if people were heading over there to play a good King Kong related game.
Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie.
There we go.
Wow.
There we go.
What a succinct name.
Cool. So I guess rounding off our list of games, and I've never played any of these, so I'm going to need your help here, guys. The Jurassic Park games.
So I know that early Jurassic Park games from like the 90s were like side-scrolling 2D platformers. And I have a vague recollection of playing one of those games, but it's a vague recollection. I have played the Jurassic World games, which are like an RTS type game where you build your own park, I guess, but then certain things will happen. But those games, the Jurassic, or at least the first one, Jurassic Park World, or Jurassic World, I think it's called, that is very heavily borrowing from the movies, down to like the assets that you're using. Like you have the visitor center from Jurassic World, that big teepee type thing. You have Dr. Ian Malcolm narrating you as you come into every park. So they draw very heavily from the game in terms of assets, but like there's no real story to Jurassic World. I mean, there is a campaign, and you're basically creating parks and then upgrading them, and then going to another island, and they use the islands as basis for your parks. But I mean, I wouldn't say that they are like direct. Oh, this is a translation of the movie into a video game. I mean, they are really good, don't get me wrong. I mean, Jurassic World, I think the day I bought it, I played for 12 hours straight. And, I mean, that's just the nature of a strategy game. But, yeah, I mean, I don't really recall early Jurassic Park games. Like I said, I have a vague recollection of playing them.
Well, I mean, it's good to hear that those ones at least were focusing more on park building.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys remember, like at arcades, a lot of the expensive ones were for, I don't even remember, it used to cost like 6 or 8 tokens at Magic Company. And it used to be a Jurassic Park game where you just ended up shooting a lot of dinosaurs.
Yeah, it was
which to me didn't seem to match up with what the idea of Jurassic Park is actually all about.
Yeah, it wasn't a dinosaur shooting range, was it?
So Jurassic Park is like Alien in the sense that it's one of the properties where they made a whole bunch of games for everything, over the years. And most of the time they had very little to do with the movie. Or at least the storyline of the movie. Like they kind of mention the characters, and the dinosaurs themselves, the characters of the dinosaurs kind of are more important than the people involved. But yeah, I think my first experience with games from this IP was Jurassic Park Warpath, which is a really cool little PlayStation 1 fighting game where you kind of get to choose the carnivores to fight against each other, right? You can you play, it's the Allosaurus versus the T-Rex or the Spinosaurus, and then it's very bloody and violent, and and little people running around, and then you can eat the little people to heal yourself. It's pretty crazy. And then other than that, it was just like you said, park building games. Yeah. Like Operation Genesis was for the PlayStation 2, and you get to build a park, and then that game became the Jurassic Park World or Jurassic World games where you know
build your park
and they have great
make
graphics.
sure that the T-Rex can escape so that it eats your visitors.
Yeah, it has the poop area and you have to clean the dinosaur poop, simulation vibes.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more Jurassic Park related media. I think, isn't there Camp Cretaceous, or am I remembering that name correctly?
Yeah, that's a Netflix animated series.
Yes, I'm sure there will be some more kind of gaming related stuff as it regards the Jurassic Park world that
a mobile game. Like,
hope not. I'm not a mobile game.
The Jurassic Park IP is one of the ones that we need a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
Just like the Avengers, I think, and the Marvel stuff. Just take it easy for a little bit.
Cool. So that kind of rounds up our list. We're not going to love and leave you yet, though. We did want to highlight a few movies that we think deserve a good video game.
Yeah.
So I guess the first one isn't a movie. It is an anime series. We are unashamedly big fans of Neon Genesis Evangelion in The Office. And who doesn't...
Evangelion? Like Asus made that mistake? Oh.
Shout out to whoever designed that. Hopefully you're still gainfully employed. So an Ava video game, a good one at least. We know that the skins or DLC from the anime have been used for mech-related fighting games, but I think a standalone Ava game, one that perhaps potentially also kind of explores the psychological side of the Ava series, because it is one of the weirder anime. It's definitely not a starter anime for people that are averse to children doing very adult things.
Yeah. So I know that in Japan, the IP has been co-opted as a cash grab IP, right? So they've a lot of little so I don't know who owns Evangelion, but they kind of just give it to whoever wants it, right? Here, you take it and you make a quick little PlayStation 1 game. And those games are not good and very obscure and they've never really left Japan, right? So I think a really cool, I don't know, like maybe a third-person game where you get to pilot the Ava and stuff and run around and shoot angels and do cool stuff. I think that could be cool, especially because now Evangelion is very open. Now I think the newest version of the anime is kind of like in this alternate universe happening things after the world ended in the last one. I'm not too sure. I haven't really been following it.
Yeah, the movies that have followed the series are not really the type of media that you're not there to make sense of it. Right. Just let's have it just wash over you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe a game like that could be interesting. But yeah, more Ava stuff, just not bad Ava stuff. Cool Ava.
Yes.
Please.
Yes, more cool Ava stuff, please. The next thing is, and I'm going to ask you, Brendyn, here. Yeah. Is Denzel Washington a part of this?
Yes.
All right. So you've listed The Equalizer.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have Hitman, the Hitman series. Sure. But I feel like that kind of Agent 47 has run its course. And I think that the Equalizer series is a really good alternative to a Hitman series. I don't know if you haven't watched The Equalizer, Denzel Washington plays a retired military operative, I guess, cool some law enforcer, but he's just able to dispatch bad people in very creative ways. And it reminds me a lot of Hitman, and I feel like it would be such a great way to kind of introduce a black character as a main character into a video game. By basing it off of this. I mean, you could even have Denzel voice it, although I don't recommend that because screen actors don't really translate into voice actors very well a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Although Denzel is amazing, so if anybody could do it, he could. So I would love to see those movies translated into a video game similar to Hitman, where there's like a stealth element. You have to plan out your mission, and you ultimately crossing off names to get to the top dog at somewhere, right?
Well, I mean, the wheels are already turning in my head. I'm thinking of like an equalizer game that is similar to Sifu.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And then there's obviously a big part of the movie is that he has like a stopwatch on his wristwatch that he likes to turn like, I think it's like 90 seconds or something.
Yeah.
You have a timer on.
And you have to finish the combat in 90 seconds. I mean, I think it would be great. It's like Super Hot meets Sifu
Or
meets Hitman.
Hotline Miami is the same, right? The faster you do it, the better it is. You get more rewards or whatever.
So cool. I think it could be a cool, and I also think it's one of those movies that nobody would think like, oh, this could be a video game. But every time I watch it, I'm just like, damn, I want to be Denzel. And the only way I can do that is by playing a video game with him. So yeah, that's why I put this on the list. I just think it's a great IP that could translate really well into a video game, especially with the hyper-violence of the movie, sorry.
My man. All right. So I guess sticking with hyperviolence, I've stuck in here Kill Bill, which I think not only from a story perspective, but from a gameplay perspective could be really cool if it was made into a game, especially the hack and slash elements. We think about Uma Thurman's character, Beatrix Kiddo?
The Bride.
Right. Taking on the Crazy 88 gang.
Yeah.
In that.
That's actually, now that I think about it.
So, and there'll be plenty of boss battles for the game as well. There's scope for an expansion too.
From software.
Like
Kill Bill, do it.
Could you imagine?
You know what, guys? I think we should just.
What are we doing
We're
here?
pivoting Hypertext into game development. So that was my suggestion.
Kill Bill is like, it's so narratively focused. Like it's such a movie, you know. Yeah. Like a lot of the enjoyment you get out of Kill Bill is like the cinematics or the cinematography rather, and the editing and stuff like that, and the music and the shots, the eyes, and it has a cool anime section. I think in the second one. This one would be tough to make a game, I think. I don't know.
I mean, I think if you look at something like My Name is Pedro, that reminds me a lot of Kill Bill in terms of the way that it's presented and its style. I think the Persona games also kind of have that sort of comic book vibe that would be translated well into something that's maybe a bit more real world.
I don't know why, but the Afro Samurai game jumped into my mind. I don't know if you guys played that one.
I did play it. I was unfortunately sorely disappointed. Yeah. But that's maybe because also I put the Afro Samurai anime on such a high pedestal.
But that also had kind of the same where it's like you get to cut up a large crowd of people, and that I think that you could do that with Kill Bill, just slashing a bunch of nerds. That could be cool. That'd be fun.
Cool. Our next, I guess, suggestion is around, and I think this IP is being mined quite a bit.
Yeah,
the
right
Hunger
now.
Games.
There's a new movie out right now. Songbirds and Snakes.
Which we're all going to watch it.
Absolutely not. But the Hunger Games, I think we've had 3 movies about it. Obviously, it's based on a series of books. But I think that this could work as a sort of MMO live service game where you basically become a tribute from a district and you have to fight through people to win a match or battle royale. I mean, everybody loves a battle royale, I guess. It's kind of weird that it hasn't been turned into a video game. Probably not as weird as I think, because who really wants to play as Katniss Everdeen?
The Hunger Games, the official game from the
movie, yeah. And I don't think the movies were as well received as I'm remembering them to be.
I distinctly remember them losing a lot of momentum after the first one.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's really something that people would be interested in, but I think if you approached it in a clever way where it's a live service or a battle royale game or something to that effect, I think you could, even just like an extraction shooter like Escape from Tarkov, like that would be a really cool concept for that. Like you have to extract food for your district, and yeah.
Or you could, it's called the Hunger Games, but what it really is a battle royale, right?
Yeah.
If you really think about it.
Yeah.
So you just make a battle royale of the Hunger Games.
I mean, I suppose we could just isn't Katniss Everdeen a skin in Fortnite? I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
And I'm sure you can use microtransactions to give your character, like they have like patrons in the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Just use microtransaction for that. I'm just a good idea machine at this point.
Systems, though. There's systems you could build there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be done.
I mean, you could have start off with no weapons, got to run to the center with everybody. It's a change from Modern Warfare or PUBG, where you have to scratch it to find weapons. If everything's in the center, it kind of forces people.
Yeah, that could be.
Listen, studios, these are not. You're not allowed to take them without.
Yeah, we're gonna have to edit this part out. I think too much good IP here. I guess now the final pick is a rather selfish one, at least from my end, and that is the 13th Warrior. For anyone who doesn't know, the 13th Warrior, it is based on a Michael Crichton novel, and it is a brilliant film, no matter what the detractors will say, starring Antonio Banderas. It mixes in language, history, Vikings, cannibals. It's got everything. And I think as an RPG game, it could definitely work.
Absolutely. Something like Skyrim, where it's just this huge open thing. You can do what you want, go where you want. Yeah.
Imagine fighting off a swarm of the fireworm with your fellow. I think there are only 9 left at that stage, but I'm sure they can iron out the details of it later.
Yeah.
I think also the progression thing where you start in Arabia and you kind of move towards the Norse countries. I think it's Denmark. They don't really say what country it is. But he gets more Viking-y. He's very soft at the beginning, and then he's forced to become harder. That could be cool progression in the game, and you get to choose different weapons. Your sword is faster if you make it sharper, or you get to use a giant Viking sword. Things like that.
I mean, I feel like the Assassin's Creed games have tried to do that of late. I haven't played Mirage, but I did play Valhalla and Odyssey, and there are that little bit of if depending on what weapon you're playing with, you attack a bit faster or whatever. These systems all exist. Just turn good movies into good games. This is not hard.
Yeah,
people.
I suppose it has to do with the 13th Warrior was, I think it's the biggest box office bomb ever.
Why?
I might be wrong. I've only done a quick Wikipedia squiz about it. I love the movie.
Same.
I watched a lot with my dad. It was very nostalgic. It was the most violent movie I watched when I was 12 years old. Probably shouldn't have. There's the scenes where people get their heads ripped off and stuff. And super great soundtrack. Just awesome. Just, overall super great. And I don't understand why people hated it or why no one went to go watch it at the movie theater. But this one is definitely an outside pick to make a game because for some reason, no one cares about this movie anymore. I guess except for the Hypertext office. And I guess it goes like what you said. Why don't people make good games out of good movies?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they make a good game out of the 13th War? Because
it wasn't a very good movie.
No one would buy it.
According to people, yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things, though, is that if you build it, they will come. I mean, Fortnite started out as a single-player game with a little battle royale mode, and then people were like, "Oh, hey, this is kind of fun." Minecraft was very much dead for a few years. I mean, and I know it was hugely popular. It got to 1 million players incredibly quickly, but then it kind of fell off, and then PewDiePie came back, and then everybody was playing Minecraft again. So I think it's really just a case of making something good and then trusting that people will find it and play it. Godfall, just as an example, was a terrible movie, terrible game, terrible, and people still played it. But I don't know. I think it boils down to what we were talking about earlier, is that the time it takes to make a video game, a good video game at least, just kind of means that if you're producing a movie, it's kind of not even a thought in your head to release a tie-in video game, right? If we had to have Spider-Man, what was the last one? Homecoming? Far From Home?
No Way Home?
No Way Home. Like, if we had to turn that into a video game, that would have taken years. At which point, Spider-Man 2 is coming out. And can you make a game that's better than Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 from... Who was it who made these games?
The one
The new ones, yeah, the latest ones.
not Rocksteady.
Oh, Insomniac.
Insomniac.
Yeah.
The name just escaped me, sorry. But can you make a better Spider-Man game than them? I doubt it. You know, so I think that the other problem is that while we were scrolling looking for some jump outs from video games that are based on movies, like there were a lot of developers back in like the 90s, the 80s, even the early 2000s. And now you have developers that have been bought up by other developers, which are now owned by whole publishing houses like Microsoft with Activision Blizzard, Bethesda, Ninja Theory, 343. Like they own all of these IPs, but they're just not using them. Like Rockstar has all of these IPs that they're sitting on. They could do The Warriors, remake that, but they're not going to. Just like they're not going to remake Bully, which is a really stupid move.
That would be cool, yeah.
The most underrated Rockstar game.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, I think it's just the development time that it takes to put into a video game. It's not a risk that a lot of people want to take anymore because it costs so much. And all you need is for somebody to be like, oh, this video game's too woke, or somebody to give it a bad score on Metacritic, and nobody's going to touch your game with a 10-foot pole.
Cool. Well, I think we've solved everything now.
Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of rounds up our list. If you have any suggestions or you think we are totally out of pocket for what we've been saying, let us know on social media. And also, just kind of rounding off our gaming-related podcast for the month of November, we have one around Masturbate. I mentioned earlier, we're discussing PlayStation versus Xbox, which is the best. And it should be interesting. So keep an eye out for that next week. Should be publishing next week, Friday. This episode also publishing on Friday, so do enjoy.
Yeah.
And for myself, Rob Nietzsche, take care. From Brendyn Lots.
Cheerio.
Louis Monzon.
Bye, guys.
Cheers all.